Good morning on this Sunday, May 4th, and welcome to the Georgia Gang. A new AJC poll spells trouble for both parties in Georgia. Democratic support plummets as Trump's approval rating sinks. Atlanta's new police training center opens. Protesters say the fight, though, is far from over. And Decatur reverses course why the school board is bringing back DEI policies despite pressure from Washington. Melita, Phil, Theron, and Brian are all here. The debate and discussion begin right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
It's bad news for both parties in Georgia. A new AJC poll shows Democratic support among Georgia voters has plunged to just 35%, the party's lowest mark in nearly a decade. Democratic support among independents is down to 24%, and even 1/3 of liberals say they're not happy with the direction of the party. But Republicans aren't celebrating either. According to the poll, former President Donald Trump's approval rating in Georgia has dropped to 43%, with 55% of voters disapproving, driven largely by concerns over inflation and the economy. Now, both parties are facing growing discontent from within. Brian, let's start with you first this week. Polls are a snapshot in time. We always say that. But if you were advising Republican candidates right now, what do you tell them when it comes to messaging about President Trump?
Well, the Republicans are kind of in a wait-and-see period right now because a lot of what President Trump is doing, as he has warned people, will have a transition period. There's going to be some pain. And so you see some people reacting to that, people who maybe have seen their stock market portfolio go down a little bit, maybe people who work in industries that are having supply chain disruptions right now. President Trump kind of said this was going to come. And so the party is basically at a wait-and-see time now, hoping that President Trump's vision works. And the party has a lot riding on whether or not President Trump's vision works. If the economy is in good shape in 2026, Republicans are going to do great in Georgia and around the country. If the economy is not in good shape in 2026, the Democrats, even despite their terrible numbers, will have a rebound, which is very normal in a midterm year going against a president's party. So there's a little bit of wait and see, but one thing you're seeing from Republicans is the immigration issue is one where Americans appreciate what Republicans are trying to do. The contrast with Democrats is so very stark. They promised change, they promised they would get illegals out, and they're doing it, and Americans want to see that.
Theron, a lot of Democrats say that, party leaders aren't doing enough to fight back against Trump's policies. So they have to walk a line, though, because they don't want to turn off the independent voters.
Well, I'm glad you brought up independent voters, because the one thing I would add to your amazing package is that Republicans, particularly Trump, are in the dumpster when it comes to independent voters. I'll use Brian's vote. It's terrible numbers. You can't win in Georgia, Phil Kent, as you always tell us, if you don't have independent voters. And so he is not doing well. 2/3 of the independent voters said that they don't believe in what he's doing. It's not working. The other thing is Doge. While the polls show that people, majority, only like 50+%, said that they think it's the right direction to head in. But they talked about Elon Musk. Come on, Lori, how can we forget Elon Musk? This bromance that didn't even last 99 days because he's left the White House because he ran it into the ground. And I want to remind our viewers, I said that they were going to make mistakes. They have made over a dozen mistakes, and they've all tried to correct them, and Democrats can't let them get away with it. Let's talk about the Democratic numbers. Look, whenever you are a party who is going through a rebuilding stage like we're going through right now, yes, you got to rebuild a tent. I said this last week. We got to bring everyone we need a Democratic winning coalition. But I do believe that if you're Donald Trump right now, you're at 43%. He's nationally at 44%. He has the lowest approval rating in any president in the last 7 decades at this point in time. You know who had the second lowest? Donald Trump in 2016. What happened in 2020? He got beat by Joe Biden. So Republicans right now are terrified. And I'm hearing from the business community, Melita, we talk about this a lot. And to use John Ossoff's word, which he said on the Political Breakfast podcast right now, they all feel paralyzed because this president promised us low inflation. He promised us that he was going to end the war in Ukraine. He told us he was going to reduce all these prices. He said he was going to have this great economy, and everything is opposite of what he promised us.
Phil, you can respond to that.
I've got a different take.
Of course you did.
Phil, are you not feeling paralyzed?
You're not feeling paralyzed? Independence?
Let's talk about the independents. Even quoting the AJC poll, only 24% of independents in Georgia favor the Democrats. So, Lynn, let me finish because their pollsters are different. I obviously work with Insider Advantage with Matt Towery. He does the polling, and Matt is polling right now, and so is Emerson, another good polling company. So is Rasmussen. They have Trump coming up now, and Brian framed it correctly a few minutes ago. There's a wait and see, but you're seeing, I mean, just Atlanta-based Pratt Industries just announced they're doing $5 billion of investment here in this country. I think things are working, to Brian's point, and more things are going to be working with the economy, with energy independence and then dominance. So I think this waiting period is going to be great for Republicans. Theron, 59% of African Americans in Georgia are favorable to the Democrat Party. I was actually amazed at that. And I think that with Trump coming up in some of these polls, as I'm pointing out, John Ossoff, your Democrat senator, is underwater. No incumbent should ever be underwater who's a U.S. senator. He's only at 47% in the latest Trafalgar poll. You've got a lot of work to do, Theron.
All right, Melita.
Oh, and Melita, too.
Melita, weigh in here.
Well, the people, I think, are dissatisfied because on the Democratic side, the Democratic leadership, at least at the state party level, is in flux until we have that election. But people want to hear marching orders about what they can do with their frustration, how they channel their time and energy. They don't want just a give me some money message. So I think that's part of the frustration that I hear building. But this wait and see, we have not yet seen on the East Coast the impact of the tariffs. The ports on the West Coast are empty. In 10 days, the ports on the East Coast will be empty. That's going to have an impact on all those distribution center jobs that we have here in Georgia. It's going to have an impact on the ports in Brunswick and Savannah. Those are going to be devastating problems for Georgia. Georgia's 3 top trading partners are Canada, China, and Mexico. The tariffs have created, even if they're withdrawn, they've created an unstable environment for business relationships. The pecan industry in Georgia, for example, has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars developing a market in China. People are going to wonder if they can depend on, no matter what happens with the tariffs, if they can depend on their supply sources after this. So what Trump's chaos and confusion is not going to sort out quickly.
Brian, I guess the question is, how long can we do this wait and see before it becomes very unsettling? And then, how does this impact the Senate race here in Georgia? Because we saw the AJC poll also pointed out that Governor Brian Kemp is really the leading candidate to challenge the incumbent Senator Ossoff.
Let's talk about that Senate race, because everybody in Georgia politics was waiting on Governor Kemp's oldest daughter to get married last Saturday. Not because we're all invested in that, but congratulations, Garrett and Brooks, but because we knew he was waiting to see if he was going to announce after the wedding what he was going to do. So we're waiting to see. He's got a few more days left, a little more than a week left in the bill signing period, and he is #1 target for the Republicans to take on John Ossoff. He is the best chance for taking that seat back, and all others basically are second tier. But the others don't have the name ID that Brian Kemp has, and if they become the nominee, they're going to have that then. $100 million, $200 million is going to get spent to tell Georgians who these folks are. So I'm less worried about that. We saw polling in Politico earlier this year that showed Ossoff beating some of these other second-tier candidates, but the generic ballot where it says, would you vote for a Republican or a Democrat with no names on it, Republicans led with 3 points. That's margin of error, but it goes to show Republicans in Georgia still have an organic advantage here. So that's going to be some headwinds for John Ossoff going into 2026. One thing Republicans have going for us is Ossoff has voted against Israel in a way that divided his base, upset much of the Jewish community that has was a big supporter of his when he last ran. And he voted against the girls' sports bill, which makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. I asked him about it this week, and he kept saying, Brian, which I knew he was really annoyed with me when your mom starts saying your name all the time. So it's going to be very competitive no matter who's in this race.
All right, Theron.
So, two things. One, John Ossoff has a 96% approval and voting record when it comes to things that overall impact the Jewish community. Let's just say that. All right. So this whole notion that he's got all this turbulence and people in the Jewish community is mad at him, that's not true. Brian, he's right, and I said your name correctly, not like he said. And don't act like he was chastising you. You irked at him a little bit. But he also told you the pool is open. He told you anybody who wants to jump in this race on the Republican side, he's fine. And then the last thing I want to say is this about Brian Kemp. He's an incumbent governor. If you got two governor and as a U.S. senator statistically tied, and he is pretty popular because he's been on the ballot most recently than John Ossoff, the question is, can his popularity as governor translate to a U.S. Senate race? And I think that is the thing that his polling is saying. And I'll say this, Marty Kemp, it depends on when does she want to go to D.C. Does she want to go in 2026, or does she want to try to maybe think about going in 2028? And I'm not putting words in her mouth, and I don't know about the Kemp family. Congratulations to the daughter getting married, but I think that they have earned the right to sit at home and to make some money and to let others step up and run for U.S. Senate.
All right, Phil and Melita,
just
very
a
quickly.
Quick footnote on this race Trafalgar poll that I mentioned just a minute ago. They also polled who would be the best Republican candidate if Kemp didn't get in, and Mike Collins, the congressman from Georgia, who's a Trump favorite, was only 5 points under Ossoff, and so I thought that was very interesting.
Melita, quickly.
Well, the poll that we're talking about, the Kemp versus Ossoff thing, they're both within the margin of error. So it's really close. And the other thing is, what role would Marty Kemp want in D.C.? Yeah. That's the big question.
And I'm going to tell you this, it's Mike Collins, right? Because I always say Mac. Bring Mike Collins on. We would love to have Mike Collins as the Republican nominee.
We'd love to have Ossoff as the Democrat. We're stuck with him.
He's our guy. We got our guy.
All right.
You are stuck with him.
Coming up, it's open, but the fight isn't over. Protesters vow to keep up the pressure as Atlanta's controversial police and fire training facility officially opens.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
The Atlanta Public Safety Training Facility is now open, but the protests are not stopping. As city and state leaders cut the ribbon this week, activists vowed to keep fighting what they call Cop City, saying the battle is far from over. Melita, they can continue the protests, but have opponents really lost the fight in this one? I mean, you see, it's open.
Well, it is open, but I think the discussion will continue over what exactly they are training, whether the curriculum includes some de-escalation kind of training for officers. And the other thing is that we have to see what happens with the fact that State Patrol continues to have high-speed chases within Atlanta city limits, even though the City of Atlanta Police Department has declined to do them. So the discussion about police tactics and what is and is not allowed within the proper parameters for public safety is a discussion that will continue.
Phil.
Well, the training materials are out for anybody to look at. And as a former military police officer myself, yeah, you should be de-escalating, but that's sometimes in a split-second decision, you got to shoot. It's pretty basic there. I think that it's basically over. The left, the hard left, can complain about it all they want, but people want law and order, and I always have commended Mayor Andre Dickens for fighting back against the radicals and seeing it through. The Police Foundation was a great ally, and I thought it was basically bipartisan to get this for public safety.
All right, I want to move on. Former Georgia Senator David Perdue is headed to Beijing. 16 Democrats joined Republicans in confirming him as President Trump's ambassador to China. Georgia Senators Ossoff and Warnock opposed the nomination, citing concerns over Trump's tariff policies and Perdue's support for them. Brian, this certainly places Perdue at the center of really one of the most critical and complicated global relationships.
And let me say on our senators voting no, this is somebody from their home state, and it's fairly traditional to vote for people from your home state, even if they're for the other party. Would have loved to have seen them show some support there. David Perdue's got a perfect resume to be the business liaison between the United States and China, our most important trading partner really in the grand scheme of things, or at least they were. We'll see what the future holds. this is going to be a really sticky wicket for him because obviously there's so much tension between our two countries right now. They are strategic adversaries to us, but he has lived there in the past, probably familiar with the language to some degree. He has been in American businesses operating in China. That's a complicated set of skills that he has acquired. No one would be better for this job than he is. Congratulations to him. Good pick by President Trump.
So former U.S. Senator David Perdue has been a Trump loyalist, and you're talking about tradition, Brian. There's total disregard for tradition in Washington right now, and that Trump is back. I think that what Warnock said was this: they're very concerned about his ability to stand up to China, particularly with the tariffs deals in the current state that they're in. No one can talk about his credibility. I mean, look, he's been a loyalist. He's a former Reebok CEO, and I think since he's lived there, he can go over. But I think what the senators were saying, is he going to be willing to stand up to them, because you have a president right now who's blinked multiple times when it comes to the tariffs. But I think ultimately, look, Senator Perdue is great for this job. He's run unsuccessfully for office. He got beat by John Ossoff, so now he stayed loyal to Trump, even when he ran against Brian Kemp, remind our viewers. But this is a job that I think, out of all the ambassadorships and the people being placed, this is the most important one.
I think both parties ought to have their picks confirmed if they're qualified. And I wish we would get back to that. He certainly is, Perdue's certainly very qualified. I thought it was just very mean and petty for both of our Georgia senators to vote no.
All right, well, moving on, DeKalb County is once again asking for more time to fix its long-running sewer problems, this time pushing for a full overhaul of its agreement with state and federal regulators. At a hearing this week, a federal judge made it clear any extension won't come without consequences. The county has already missed multiple deadlines, and the judge says delays have real impacts on neighborhoods, on waterways, and public health. It sounds like an expensive overhaul. Melita.
Well, the original consent decree was signed in 2011. So throughout his entire term, as much as we all like to hear Mike Thurmond speak, as much as we enjoy talking with him and think he has a wonderful personality, it was a failure of leadership for him to keep kicking this can down the road and not address these issues while he served as CEO. He announced the fact that they were missing this deadline on his last day in office. So a new leader will have to face the consequences, and she has shown great signs of trying to work with the feds and solve the problem. And they're showing that they're going to increase the rates. And it was evident that those rates that the water department was running in the red for years before they made the decision to increase the rates.
When are we going to see somebody take a page out of former Atlanta Mayor Shirley Franklin's playbook? Because she had to do this very same thing in Atlanta how many years ago, Brian?
Well, you got to have leadership at the top communicating about this to the taxpayers, to the water ratepayers. I'm a DeKalb resident, and I don't feel like I've gotten a lot of communication about this. What I have heard about is that my rates are going to go up 10% a year for the next 10 years, and I'm very worried about how that's going to impact low-income people in the county. There's no way to offer discounts to people who are below a certain poverty threshold. So I understand what you're saying. I do wish we had done more in the last 8 years, but I think that this is a generational problem in DeKalb County to have gotten here. And there's been many, many administrations that haven't moved the ball forward fast enough.
I have to jump in here. I was not going to say anything. I think CEO Lorraine Harkin-Johnson is doing a great job. She's doing what she can. But Melita, I have to push back on you to infer and to say that Michael Thurmond did not do enough or anything to do consent decree. That's just blatantly false. Let me tell you, as somebody who represented the county during his time, who went to Washington, D.C. with David Perdue, talked to the EPD, actually extended a consent decree, and the fact that he actually notified on the last day, you can't discount all the work that was done before that. And the thing is, you just heard from a DeKalb County resident, it's not so much that nothing was done, they can all do more to make sure that you deal with this very, very important issue. I mean, you can look at the water stations, you can look at all the things that he put in place, but I agree, you gotta wrap your arms around this current CEO and this commission to make sure that we deal with the problem in front of them now.
I gotta leave it there. Coming up, Decatur reverses course, why the school board is bringing back its DEI policies despite pressure from Washington.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
City schools of Decatur reversing course. The board is bringing back several DEI policies after rolling them back under pressure from the Trump administration. Theron, to you first on this one. What does this mean, and could we see other school systems follow suit?
It's about being true to your beliefs, and that when you say DEI, it's basically being inclusive of everyone. And Decatur Public Schools is a diverse school system. They looked at this pretty thoroughly. They have been someone who has been promoting DEI before the term became a target for Republicans to become anti-DEI. There could be consequences to this, but however, I think that if you look at the makeup of that district, you look at the school board members, they talked long about this, but I think that this now will set precedent for other school systems in Georgia to really look deeply, and if they need to reverse it, they can reverse it and just weigh the consequences. But I just think that, look, you have so many educators and parents right now who are very concerned about what the Trump administration is doing, cutting funding, eliminating the Department of Education, have these unfunded mandates. They talk a big game about public education, HBCUs, but there's no money in those proposals.
Phil, could we see other districts? I mean, this is a district that listened to its constituents.
Well, I'd like to, you mentioned that it's inclusive. The DEI programs that have been attacked and have been knocked down are not inclusive. There's anti-Asian, there's anti-white, there's anti-Jewish problems with DEI, as you well know. Now, if that's cleaned up, I think people, reasonable people would take a look at that type of curriculum. But for right now, it's very divisive. And well, I'm in favor of all sorts of history and all sorts of ethnicities that are represented. DEI, as we know it now, is not working, and I think it's risky to do this.
Melita.
The last word in the DEI is inclusive, and that includes children with every kind of learning disability who are mandated to be covered by educational programs. So what we sometimes think about when we try to make DEI sound awful is how inclusiveness for education gives children who in the past would not have had an opportunity to excel at their level.
Brian, final word on this one.
This being voted on by the Decatur City School System Board is as shocking as this vote if it had happened in the Democratic National Committee, right? This is a very left-wing electorate in the city of Decatur. So you see school board members who are reacting to left-wing constituents who are, angling for a fight. They want to fight. I am for being nice to people. I am for meritocracy. I don't care what your skin color is, what race you are. If you have earned it, you should get it. And we should be nice to everybody, no matter what. That's where I come from. The DEI thing that bothers me is that it comes with a bureaucracy. It comes with people who have DEI jobs. And then what do? They then have to go find stuff to do to justify their position. And what they become is speech police who monitor what conservatives say. That's what it really does.
Can I go? I want to go to one more topic quickly, because over in Cobb County, Tuesday's special election was a big win for Democrats who swept both races, Theron.
Yeah, shout out to Eric Allen, former state representative, who ran for this seat. This was a seat that Republicans were targeting. They thought they can actually pick up the seat, so he won. And also Monique Sheffield, who was an incumbent on the board. Why is this significant? Because now DeKalb County, which is a blue county in Georgia, very important to this winning Democratic coalition, will keep its Democratic majority on the commission. And I think that they'll also help Chairwoman Alicia Cupid get some of her initiative done as well.
Phil, quick.
Well, these are two districts that were Democrat leaning anyway. It's not a surprise. Cobb County is still a huge Republican vote generator, so special elections are very tricky.
All right, coming up, winners and losers. Stay tuned.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
On our April 6th broadcast, we discussed the dismissal of a long-running federal lawsuit challenging the electronic voting system that's used in Georgia elections. Well, we should note that Kathy Woolard, who participated in our discussion that day, was one of many defendants in that case in her role as chair of the Fulton County Board of Elections for some of that time the lawsuit was pending. Okay, on to winners and losers. Brian.
I want to thank everybody who came to my birthday party.
Happy birthday, it was
fun.
fun.
Thank you. I turned 50 this week and I had so much fun. It was just the best week ever. And I want to remember former state representatives Ben Harvin and Susan Holmes, who died in the last week. Both served for a long time, served Georgia for their entire lives. And Susan was in her 80s, had a wonderful big family. Her husband Paul played for Georgia back in the 60s, and he was her constant companion. We will miss her. And Ben Harbin was the Appropriations Committee chairman for many years and a beloved figure around the state capitol. Died tragically far too young.
Aaron.
Athens lost a wonderful woman this week. Mrs. Barbara Dent McRae, the McRae family in Athens. Dr. McRae's a dentist. I went to school with Ken and Matt, and I also know their daughter. Just want to extend my sincere condolences to her. She was a wonderful woman, a philanthropist, made an impact on so many young people's lives, including my life. Shout out to Outkast for being selected as the new inductee to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Shout out to my guy Nate Kelsey, who works as the public safety director at the Mercedes-Benz Dome. I went and saw KDOT this weekend, B-Rob. And then loser is Towns County Sheriff's Office for not doing more to research what happened to those black twin boys up in that county.
All right, Phil.
I got to make my grandson Charlie Kent a winner. He got accepted to the University of
Yay,
Georgia.
go Dogs.
So go Dogs. And yes, Ben Harbin, the former legislator, and Susan Holmes, sadly, they were great public servants and winners. And we're running out of time, so I better give it to Melita.
Well, I'm going to surprise everybody by making former governor, now Chancellor Sonny Perdue, a winner for using his influence as a former cabinet secretary to defend the Okefenokee Swamp and urge its inclusion as a World Heritage Site.
We're going to leave it on a good note there. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.